What's up, trash talkers? Listen, it's impossible to fight, okay, if you don't know what you're fighting for. Does that make sense? Like, if you're in the dumps and you're struggling with mental health, things of that nature, it's going to continue tearing you down, all right? Because you're consistently trying to fight something, which is that demon, which is usually something from the past, right? Maybe that why needs to be fighting for your future. Let that be your why. Get the hell up and start fighting for your future. Stop fighting things that happened in the past. Easier said than done, right? Go seek help. It's okay not to be okay. A lot of people need to hear this. You are more of a warrior and a fighter if you stand up and say, hey, this has to stop. I need to go seek help. The stigma, everything has changed. It's okay not to be okay.
Here is a firm believer in all men are created equal, but not all men live equal. That is why there's a certain select number of people in the DoD who decided to jump out of airplanes. And yes, we are better than you. 100%. Now, don't be the first triggered pansy to say, well, airborne's not relevant. You haven't jumped since World War II. Well, that's not accurate, for one. And two, it's like having a jalopy or a 68 Mustang. Well, a 68 Mustang's no longer relevant. Doesn't matter. It's still a better car than yours. So take it easy this National Airborne Day and just accept that we are better than you.
So, two things for today's Honesty Cap. First thing, how do all my boys from the 101st feel knowing that the Army decided that instead of actually making you airborne, they would just create a whole new division that's airborne because you just aren't cutting it? It sucks. Thing number two, for all the folks that were like, oh, airborne is irrelevant, doesn't even matter. They're making a whole new division of just airborne people because they're relevant. Think about that. How's that feel? Does it hurt a little bit? I hope it hurts a little bit.
This is the Veteran Trash Talk Hour, hosted by Nick, Dave, and Buddy. Real warriors making fun of other real warriors. Try to not get triggered.
There we go. What's up, Trash Talkers? What is up, Gruntworks Nation? Welcome to Season 2, Episode 8 of the Trash Talk Hour. Special guest today is Rich Sherman, author of Never Home. As you can see, Buddy and I are in the same room, and Nick is golfing.
Playing golf. Well, there are important things you have to do. Networking, golfing.
Yeah.
It's imperative that you get those done.
I hope you're having a wonderful time, Nick.
I hope every one of your balls goes into the water, and that includes the ones attached to you. Take that, Nick. Have fun. Anywho,
how's everybody doing today? Good? Yeah?
Well, I'm right beside you.
Yeah, you're doing blast.
Just
yeah.
say,
yeah.
Do you, Richard, do you like to go by Richard? Rich?
Yeah, Richard. You can call me anything you want. I've been called a lot of different things.
Don't tempt us.
Yeah, well, I probably heard.
A couple more drinks in, I'll probably just be calling you Dick. Hey, Dick, what's up?
That's fine as well. I've been called that.
James. Yeah. Semper Fi, motherfucker. Is that what he's saying? Yes. Yeah.
Always.
Pennsylvania. All right. James tuning in from Pennsylvania. We're going to have a good show today. So we'll kickstart it with a conspiracy that I Googled a couple days ago. We'll go into the honesty cap, and then we'll talk about Rich a little bit. So are you guys tracking the second moon that's supposedly coming, this asteroid? That's supposed to be appearing in the sky starting in
Richard, of course, has to be tracking it because he's in the Navy and they track weird stuff.
So maybe Richard is tracking it. Some people are saying you're going to be able to see it with the naked eye. Some people are saying you're not going to be able to see it. So I don't know anything about that. However, the James Telescope discovered something else, and we're going to talk about that real quick. So Chris, play the video, and we'll go from there.
I just touched my eye.
I got that information about Congress, people in Congress being briefed about James Webb. People are being told that they spotted an object that is not natural because it course corrected, that is allegedly approaching here.
Been some significant rumors of events regarding UAP that may occur within, like 10 years or so. I don't know if it's something coming or a natural disaster. You hear of something big coming down the pike. Have you heard of these claims? And if so, do you have any idea what it may be?
Yes, I've heard of them. Yes, I'm aware of it, and I'm not able to have that conversation.
Let me see if I understand this correctly. There may be something headed for Earth. A non-human object, potentially? Is that the theory? Again, this is all allegedly, but we're, spitballing.
That's what I was told that they're telling people in Congress.
All right. So there's tons of articles on this. So basically, it's this object that's traveling over 1 million miles an hour or whatever, something crazy. It's supposed to be here in 2034. And some are saying it's an asteroid, but then other like scientists online, if you Google it, are saying it's weird because it's course corrected multiple times in a way that an asteroid wouldn't. Apparently, I can't tell you how all that works, but pretty fascinating. And I guess the big question is now, some are saying that it's an alien spaceship. It's the return of the Anunnaki, if you're into that stuff, or, the fallen angels are returning, like whatever you believe in regards to the whole alien conspiracy stuff. So I guess my question to the group is, what do you guys think? Is it just an asteroid, or is it the government like faking something to, because another conspiracy that evolves around that is where they fake a fake alien invasion to bring in like one world government and all that stuff, and that we're like right there on the cusp of that happening. I personally just think it's an asteroid, to be honest. I believe in UAPs. I think there definitely are aliens and stuff. It'd be, in my opinion, dumb to think that we're the only people in this entire universe that is like constantly expanding. So I don't think in this case that we have like the Death Star coming to Earth or like some alien spaceship. But it is weird that it's course correcting. But my take's going to be no, not an alien spacecraft. It's a meteor, and that's my take. Rich, what do you think about all this?
Well, you
What are
just
your
have to
thoughts?
pick a guy whose passionate hobby is astrophotography and astronomy. So I agree with you. The distances are so great, right? So there are this idea that there are probes that could be sent, right? Human beings to go to our nearest star, Centaurus A, would take human being an animal something like 80,000 years. And we just don't have anything on Earth that lives that long. Now we can send computers and probes that go and travel and don't have a biological life to them. And there's a guy named Avi Loeb, Loeb, who wrote an interesting book on that comet Oumuamua, which came back through here a couple of years ago. Yeah, and very interesting, right? He believes it's a probe. Most of the scientific community says no, but hey, it's a huge universe out there. We have only begun to answer some of the questions out there. Is it possible? Sure. Is it likely to be an attack? Very, very unlikely. Commands to travel 80,000 or 100,000 or a couple 100,000 years are very low frequency and take forever to be enacted. But could there be probes flying through the universe? Absolutely. There's almost no doubt that there is life on other planets, and we may soon find life in our own solar system very soon here within the next 10 or 15 years. Not intelligent life, but some type of life. So yeah, I think it's realistic that there are interesting things up there. I think the big concern also is that Musk and his boys are putting up a lot of satellites, and the Africans are putting up satellites. We have about 4,000 satellites up right now. When we get to 400,000, it becomes a lot of satellites. And one of the challenges is you start to not being able to see these small objects that may be coming to it, or just whether they are, aliens or just asteroids coming to us. It becomes much more difficult to detect them. So anyway, back to you guys. I agree with you.
That was one of the most educated responses we've ever received to any of our conspiracies. I love that.
I gotta tell you, Rich, it's gonna be hard to follow that up, especially for two reasons. One, I have jalapeno on my eye, and I just touched it. Now it's on fire. That's the thing. The second thing is, I feel like it's probably an alien spacecraft, but all I can think is that there's an alien driver of that spacecraft. and he's got alien kids in the car, and they're just like, "Are we there yet?" And he's like, 10 more fucking years, kids. Jesus, just calm down. It's 10 more years. They're like, "But daddy." Yeah, here's the thing. I don't think it is, and here's why I don't think it is. They can go 80,000 years. They wouldn't need to course correct. They just go straight. Like, what are they course correcting around?
Well, there could be some other things in the way, like other planets or whatever, or like anything.
Wouldn't they have known that?
Yeah.
It's not like they're like, "Yo, head to Mars, take a left." You know what I mean? It's like, just we're gonna go that way.
Yeah, and that's
So,
the compelling thing about the whole thing is the fact that it has course
And
corrected,
here's the
which
other
is weird,
question.
right? Like,
if it is a probe, what should we do? Should we all be real quiet and just hope that it passes us and doesn't? Like,
there's
everybody
theory
turn
on
their
that.
lights off.
There's a
That
theory
way,
on that.
we don't. Everyone has to turn their lights off. That way, they don't know we're here.
There's a name for that, and that's a conspiracy.
Oh,
in
there is
itself.
a
I can't
name
think
for
of
it,
it.
and there's a salesman at the front door doctrine where you shut the lights off and tell your kids to be quiet, so the salesman will go away and you don't have to
you
talk
keep
to them.
quiet. Like that. There's a theory that there's thousands and thousands and thousands of planets that have life on them, but they keep quiet and they don't send any messages out into space or nothing because there are civilizations. They get that message, they're going to come down and crush you.
Get them.
Yeah, I forgot the term for that, but there is a theory. That's one of the big conspiracies.
You don't want to get. You don't want to be. You don't want to be
shooting signals into space, and we're like saying, "Hey, this is planet Earth," blah 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 blah, and then some civilization that's maybe not so kind.
Basically, you don't want to be the planet that like tells people that you're there.
Yeah,
it makes
Yeah,
sense.
and I think from far away, you can see planets that are kind of interesting, be based off of the atmosphere. We have oxygen and nitrogen, and then in our atmosphere, which promotes, and carbon, which promotes life. And so you can pick that up on spectroscopy. But I do think there's a point there about maybe there is an alien driver, and he's reaching in the back to smack his kids in the head, and he's accidentally turning the wheel. And
Basically, what they're going to end up doing is they're going to get you to take a picture when it gets a little closer, and what you're going to see is a huge wagon, like a wagon with like the dad driving. Like, fucking shut up! Like, Dad, can we pull over at the moon? I gotta pee. And he's like, we're not pulling over until we get there.
It probably has paneling on the side, right? It has old style paneling on the side, and the roof rack.
100% real thing.
It's got a Thule roof rack.
100% a real thing. Yeah. True. A, it's a real thing. My take. A, it's a real thing. B, the guy that's driving, annoyed as fuck right now.
Yeah.
Super mad.
Got to pay badly.
Also, the kids have to pee. That he should pull over.
Fair. Good assessment. Good take.
All right. So, and today is it's my day for an honesty cap, and we were actually thinking about it, and I've got a double pronged honesty cap, and it is that I've realized that I am now getting, like, I've gotten to the age. I'm 47 years old, and I've gotten to the age where my trigger for rage is no longer like, it's very specific, and that trigger is ineptitude and stupidity, like zero common sense. Like, I don't have any time for it. I fly off the handle. It makes me mad, and I should do better. The other thing that I'm realizing is that I'm starting to take pictures, like looking down at my phone. Those are the two symptoms of getting old, and I have reached both of them. Like, every one of, like, I looked the other day, and like, I'm taking pictures like my dad. Like, I could do like a, there's me.
Yeah, you
And
gotta start
always,
texting with one
looking
finger.
down.
Like, look at.
I had to zoom in to text, and like, I do old technology things now. Like, I'm an older technology person. So I don't know whether I should be angry about it or just embrace it. I feel like I'm on the precipice of being the old guy that has no filter. And I don't know whether I hate it or like it. I think I like it, though. I think I just like the fact that I just don't care anymore. Like, you're an idiot. Shut up. Get out of my face. Like, yeah. I'm becoming Clint Eastwood from Gran Torino.
Oh yeah.
100% real thing. So there you go. Honesty cap. Smashed.
I was okay.
Done.
Okay. Yeah.
Hey, could have been better.
But thanks for sharing how you feel.
Yeah,
buddy.
well,
Yeah.
I'm out of my element. I'm in Arizona. It's hot here. Jerry says to embrace it, and I have embraced
Thanks,
it.
Mom. Love you.
My bad. I said, Jerry, it's Dave's mom.
Well, let's get to the guest, huh? You got.
My bad. I'm introducing. So I'm introducing Richard Sherman today. He wrote he wrote a book for Marines basically because it's a picture book. But it's a photography book called Never Home. And it's the whole title is Never Home, a honoring heroes that never returned. Um, so Richard joined the Navy in 1989. Was an ensign in the Navy in 1989. Went through the ranks, was an intelligence officer in the Navy, which I don't understand that job. Like, do you work for the Navy or do they send you down to the Marines to like
Work their intel.
not just to let them know what they can and can't eat? Like, you can't, those are rocks. Like, there should be an intelligence officer from the Navy with every Marine platoon, and that intelligence officer should be like, "Hey, he has a rolled up newspaper and he hits him on the nose and he's like, "Those are rocks. You don't eat those. Here's some crayons."
Stop licking the windows.
And then he's like, "All right, go over there and do like Marine stuff. Charge over there." And then they charge and they come back and like they're doing normal Marine stuff, like licking each other's faces. And then he hits him with the newspaper. He's like, "Don't do that anymore. The Army's watching." Is that what a Navy intel officer does? Because that's what I feel like they should do.
I'm sorry, that's classified. I can't discuss the Marines.
So what you're saying is two things. One, there is a spaceship on its way here. Two,
I can either confirm or deny the role of naval intelligence with the Marine Corps.
Yeah, you have to hit Lance Corporals in the face with newspapers because they're eating rocks.
They're eating rocks, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
The floor is yours.
So, Richard, tell us about your book.
Yeah, so thanks. This is a lot of fun. I enjoy your podcast, and thanks for having me on. And
love it.
Yeah, so I'm a photographer. I'm a professional photographer. I've been so for about 13 years or so, and wanted to undertake a project, a journey of gratitude, to remember our World War I and World War II veterans, or I guess not so much veterans, but individuals who perished in World War I and World War II and it never made it home. And so I started working in 2017 with probably the country's top book consultant, Mary Virginia Swanson, for photography books. And we started to formulate a plan and worked with the American Battle Monuments Commission, one of the great organizations within our government. I think there's only like 500 people who work for the ABMC, the American Battle Monuments Commission, and they manage and maintain the 23 World War I and World War II cemeteries around the world. They maintain 3 other cemeteries that not specifically related to World War I or World War II, and a bunch of monuments around the world. And they just celebrate their 100-year anniversary last year from 1923. You know, Jack Pershing, who was the head of the American Expeditionary Force in World War I, was their first head of the American Battle Monuments Commission. And so they do a fantastic job. I think of the 500, I think 400 are overseas. So, you know, it's a real deal. They run lean and they do a great job maintaining our cemeteries. People know Normandy very well, but in addition to Normandy, there are 22 other ones. The largest actually is in Manila, and we'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, I wanted to do the journey of gratitude. I happen to be a photographer, and this is a chance to go and say thank you. You know, if I wanted to come and say thank you, I'd come and visit Buddy, and I'd say, hey, shake your hand, look you in the eye, say thank you. Now, these people have lost their lives, but it's still the same thing. Just go and visit them, stand in front of their headstones and say thank you. And I brought my camera gear so that others could join me on this journey and experience it. And I think it's important, right? You know, as military and folks and veterans, you know, it's part of us to admire those who went before us, to keep up that tradition, and then to educate those who are coming behind us. And I think for a lot of the young folks, World War I and World War II are kind of in that nebulous background period. It could be 100 years ago, it could be 500 years ago. I've not met a World War II veteran, or I read about it in my history class in high school or something, and like maybe I remember a statistic. So, you know, the book is designed for a lot of different reasons, and a lot of different constituent groups, veterans, active military, as well as the young people, that in a format that they can appreciate, because, you know, a lot of work they do today is visual, and they learn through visual means rather than perhaps reading Rick Atkinson's trilogy on World War II or Stephen Ambrose's book, which are fantastic books, by the way. So anyway, I got on a plane and took 6 years. COVID slowed us down a bit. 3 continents, 8 different trips. around the world. Most of them are in Europe, but there's Manila, which I referred to, which is the largest by individuals memorialized, but also the famous North Africa cemetery. Although all of us have seen Patton and all understand that desert war that started the American war machine really moving and pushing the Nazis back, began in 42, 43 in the European theater and the North African theater. So yeah, there's a couple in Italy, couple in Britain as well, mostly for training or for individuals who were sent back from the front with severe injuries that didn't survive. But most of them are in France, as you might imagine, in Belgium. General Patton, who's in the book, is laid to rest in Luxembourg and memorialized there. He's interred there. Netherlands is a fantastic cemetery. But I guess it all started really around 2007 when I got into a cab up in Vancouver. Now I was working a financial services job at the time, and I got into a cab and met the cab driver, who was a Ukrainian World War II veteran. He had survived World War II, and it was an amazing conversation to meet somebody who had that experience with the American GIs. And he was overwhelmed. He's a very emotional guy. He's in his 80s at the time, but still very sincere in his gratitude. Here he was, a young man fighting in his own land. He had the Nazis in front of him. He had maybe just as bad the Red Army, the Russians behind them that would beat them and starve them, and heaven forbid they take a step back, they would shoot them. And so here he was fighting for his survival. And all of a sudden, like a miracle, the American troops from thousands of miles away showed up to help fight with them. And it was even in his 80s, he really couldn't understand why the Americans had left their homeland to help them. It was a very intimate and personal experience. With history, with time, we get to see the wars through the lens of history. But even for him at this time, it was still a very personal experience for him. He was losing his friends and family and fighting in his own land. And the second thing he mentioned, which was really a very tender and significant addition, was they would fight 4 or 5 days without food. They would get rations from a bowl of porridge or something every 4 or 5 days from the Russians. And the American troops traveling all that distance had rations every day. And there's an old saying that, firepower wins battles, but logistics wins wars. And he was still so amazed at the American war machine, Americans' ability to bring their troops and to feed them every day. And it was really intimate when he said, and they gave us their rations. They shared their rations with us. In the moment of combat, that the little thing that you care for that man next to you meant everything to him.
It's interesting. There's actually a story of a Nazi SS general coming up on an old American position, or a position that the Nazis had pushed the Americans back from. And he came up, he looked, and all of his staff was super happy because they had beaten the Americans back or whatever. And he looked down, and there was like in their little CP or whatever, they had a Boston cream pie that was sitting there. And he looked, and like it was fresh. It hadn't spoiled or anything like that. And he's like, "We're doomed. Like, we're never going to win." And his staff was like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "If they can bring a cream pie from Boston to Europe, we can't defeat that logistics system.
Yeah.
Like, we can't beat them. Like, the writing is on the wall. We're done." And so, yeah, that I think that's super interesting. But I think it also highlights it's pretty funny to me. Like, I go to Europe quite a bit, but it's funny to me the difference between, and I don't know if you've seen it in, like, when you go to other, you said you've been to 3 continents. I don't know if you've seen it in Africa or whatever, but it's odd to me the gratitude that's shown from those countries opposed to the even ability to remember from our own country for the people that were from here that went there. Like we had people that went there and gave everything for people they didn't know and had real reason to be there.
Yeah.
And the people that are in those countries, like France, they still have, memorials all the time.
Yeah.
The Netherlands still has memorials all the time where people are just super happy to see a World War II vet, or super happy because anybody came to help them. And then you talk to those like the same age people in America, and it's like they don't even know that. They're like, oh, you talking about that movie like Saving Private Ryan or whatever show they've watched, and
Band
that's
of
in the limited
Brothers or whatever. Yeah.
of the sacrifice that was made by so many people.
Yeah.
It's insane. It
Yeah.
really is crazy.
Yeah, and I think that was an eye-opening experience for me to go. Like my first cemetery I went to was the Somme World War One cemetery, smaller cemetery, a few thousand individuals, accessible emotionally, especially for a first trip, because going into Normandy and just looking down fields and fields of headstones, it's like wow, you can get overwhelmed there. But I went to the Somme. Let's see, it was Memorial Day 2018, and one of the things that's etched into my brain is it was Memorial Day, so we had the First Division had their memorial uniforms on from World War One. There was lots of flags and ceremonies, wreath laying and flowers. But all these folks came. There's a little hill in Bonnet. I think it's pronounced correctly, Bonnet, a little town, a little tiny village, and they just walked down dressed like it was a wedding, suits, dresses. Just the French folks came, and this is now World War One, not even a World War Two
Right.
day,
Mhm.
and they've came and packed the cemetery to say thank you. And yeah, it was it's still very much alive in many parts of Europe in a way that it doesn't really resonate anymore in the United States.
And the sad part about it is that it's not the showing the gratitude towards the soldiers that died there. That's part of it, but the biggest part of it is like it just highlights that we're doomed to repeat the same mistakes of those people because we don't take the time to remember the people that like fought, died, and what they were fighting and dying for, and what they were fighting against. And then we turn around and in the country, the people are doing like from all political sides, from all spectrums, they're doing the exact same thing that started those wars in the first place. They have the
Yeah.
same, it seems like the reason that they're you're almost reenacting the same behaviors is because they didn't take the time to understand why it started. To them, it's just a cliff note or like a movie plot, but it's real people that had real stories. And like it seems like your book does a like we looked at the web page and at well Richard Sherman Photography, and then you've got the book at
Neverhomeheroes.com.
Home.
Neverhomeheroes.com.
Yep.
Yeah.
We looked at some of the pictures, and it it just highlights like it just shows that there are actually people attached to those stories and not just uh it's not
I think
just
it's
a movie
it's
plot
a
or whatever. Yeah.
technological advancements too that we've had, right? So like back then with social media and stuff, like I think there is a lot more documented on us right now and readily available. A simple Google search, you can
Yeah.
like find out about like soldiers that we died in Iraq or Afghanistan, things of that nature. But back then, like you said, you just hear about it in school,
Well, the
and
crazy
now
thing
like
is
we
that
have it visually, like
yeah.
it's presenting something to the audience, because
Well,
they're forgotten ones,
what's crazy is
just like the
that like
Vietnam vets.
there are some of those guys that like well a lot of those that didn't come like that never got to come home. Like they
Yeah,
left their homes in like 1941 and then died in
yeah,
19 like 4 or 5 years later, but were never got to come back because they went to the
I know.
war
Yeah.
for years. It wasn't like go do your deployment and come on back. It was
Yeah.
like you went there for the
That's
duration
significant. Yeah.
plus 180 days.
Yeah, yeah, and
That's
you mentioned you guys
that's
had
crazy.
you guys had those paratroopers giving each other a hard time in the beginning, right in the video. But those guys had
Yeah.
125, 150% casualty rate. You got shot,
Yeah.
you went back to the front. It was just a matter of when you went back to the front, right? And then the only way you got out is that you were so severely injured that you could no longer fight or you were dead. And it was 207,621 individuals are memorialized. I use the term memorialized because many of them
Wow.
are lost to the sea or in the walls of the missing. But in our overseas cemeteries, and that's what the book was about. These folks left home, they had aspirations, they had a dog, they had a kid, they had a wife or whatever, or a husband, and their parents for sure. And they had dreams about what their life was going to become. And there's a great, I think in our world today, we talk a lot about our rights, which is important because we have to make sure we defend our rights against creeping encroachment from various sources, which you guys have talked about in the past. But it also comes with responsibility as well. And this book highlights that responsibility is like, hey, we had to draft 3 times last century. We're 25 years into this century. Maybe we make it the next 75 years without a draft, but every now and then someone comes and taps you on the shoulder, and that there's responsibility that you have as a citizen. And I think sometimes we overlook that because we've been fortunate for 50 some years to have lived without the need for conscription.
Right, 100%. And then, and yeah, we've talked about it on the show before, and I think it's a great tribute to your book. Even is that first of all, I don't even know how many World War I veterans are still alive, but it's got to be in the. It's got to be in the. There can't be any.
Well,
I mean, there could.
No,
maybe.
no, there can't.
Yeah, 100.
When I watched the documentary, I was pretty sure that they're all gone.
They probably
World War II. We might have.
Yeah, we kind of entered 17, 18 really, so they'd be 140 or so years. Yeah, so 107. They'd be 17 when they went into the war, and another 7. So they'd be 125 years old. So there aren't any that I know of. Any American World War I.
Already on the cusp.
Yeah, we were barely having like people that were born during World War One. My bad. Bad math. It's not true.
That's right. We're losing the ones that were born during World War One.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, when you stop remembering, you stop saying their names, is when they actually die. That's when they're lost. But your book is like a nice book that also you can it's a conversation starter, because the great thing about pictures is that you can look at it and everybody's going to get something different out of the picture.
James can actually.
Yeah, well, they can't have conversations unless they're intel officers with them, and then he can lead them. He can guide them like a claymore.
I can neither confirm nor deny any operations with the United States Marine Corps.
But at the end of the day, it starts a conversation that needs to be had, and it keeps the memory of those guys alive in places where sadly we don't do a very good job of it.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And we're all part of that collective of keeping that memory alive, because when you forget, that's when you start making, as you alluded to, the same mistakes over and over again. And there are 54 biographies in the books of individuals, just short biographies. So there's a little bit about their military, maybe how they died or how they received the Medal of Honor or what unit they were attached to. But I try to, as best I could, include a little vignette, something about them as people, right? They were heading home to get married. The first casualty, Charles Summers, the first casualty of World War II in Europe. Charles Summers is in Netherlands, and he died in 43. Went over in 42 as a radar operator to help the British, and died. And he was supposed to go home in 6 days and get married when his plane was lost. So the little vignettes about their lives, whether they love Jello or they played bingo, just something so that we remember them as individuals rather than a statistic in a article or a history book.
And I wanted to hit on that a little bit just for the viewers as well. Talk about a little bit the research aspect that went into that. We like DD-214s and military files, like it's easy to look a soldier up now, but like, you're actually talking about soldiers that passed away, then family members that they had. I mean, it takes a lot to get all that information. So if you could share with the viewers kind of like how you did that.
Sure.
Or what it took to do that.
I think COVID helped in some respects because I probably had fewer biographies because it's a mosaic, right? You go down certain paths. So there are online sources, the National Archives. You can go and try to look up military records. There are newspapers online or at your local library that you have databases. Ancestry is a great resource because families will put up, if they have the medical record or the DD-214 or the death certificate of somebody, and then you can confirm a little bit about that. But I relied a lot on, when I could, of course, World War I, it was very difficult to find any families, but I did find one family, Medal of Honor recipient, William Saulson, his great grandnephew, shared his picture of his Medal of Honor and some information about about him. But talking to families, but also online resources, and the American Battle Miners Commission also has access to certain repositories of information that have been shared with them, and they're very helpful with that. But I would say mostly newspapers and libraries is where because that's why I was trying to find out what they did, right? Because when the local newspaper covers it, is that he went to Woodrow Wilson High School and played basketball there, and his parents were informed of his death. So you get a little vignette about their lives. So newspapers were a really good source to get a little bit more about them personally, in addition to their service records.
Love it. Yeah. And then real quick on that, I guess, what was the response of like family members that you were reaching out to, and saying, hey, you're going to do this memorial book, things of that nature? Like, what's their response? I'm sure they'd be honored. Like I would be, thrilled, obviously, to hear about my great grandfather or whoever, but what was the response of family members?
Yeah, it was a very warm human interaction kind of thing. Many of them couldn't do enough to try to help and share some information. They were excited about the book, and keeping the memory of their individual, because some of them have never, because now their great grandsons or great grandnieces and nephews, they've never been contacted about the individual who's been lost. So it was a very cool experience for me, a very warm experience for me. I think, probably the one that I like to reflect on is Frank Tester. Tester, his father died in World War II. So Frank Tester lives in Modesto, California, and he's alive. He's in his 80s now, and he was great providing some images and some information from the family about what happened. But Frank, his dad was Glenn Tester, died. His dad had 5 brothers, but 3 of them served in the war. He had 4. His dad had 4 brothers. There was 5 sons. 3 of those sons died in consecutive years: 43, 44, and 45. And so Robert Tester and Glenn Tester. Glenn was the only one with a son, and I'm skipping the middle one. It is Earl. His middle name was Earl Tester. But anyway. They're all laying side by side together in Henri Chapelle Cemetery in Belgium. So, what an experience that is to go. There are cemeteries with, 2-3 dozen brothers laying next to each other, which is a horrific experience for a family. And here they were with 3 brothers. And you can imagine what that was like. The Tester family in 1942, their father died, the grandfather of Frank died of a heart attack. One of the other or cancer or something. One of the other brothers died as well. And then 3 went off to war. 1 remained home. And Glenn was the only one who had children. And so, in talking with Frank bought 3 books and he sent me a check. I'm not cashing my check. I tore up the check and threw it away. I mean, well, how do you take a check from a family that has sacrificed? And Glenn was Frank was very warm. And I had, it's been maybe 2 months or so since I've talked to him or texted him. But here he is, 80. He just wants to meet his dad, right? He heard stories of his dad growing up from relatives, and here he is. He was a year and a half old when his father passed away, and he's never met his dad. And he's in his text, or I guess it was email to me. He said, I really look forward someday to meeting my father. Wow, right? I mean, the toll of war is significant.
That would be that. I don't know
how I would respond.
If I was you, I don't really know if I would like that or not, just because it's the responsibility of having to, like, you're basically putting the responsibility of telling that guy's story on your own shoulders and your own, I guess, your own photography lens at that point. Like that's a huge responsibility to take from,
it's very rewarding though.
I mean,
when the reactions are how they are, so heartwarming and everything.
I sell lots of images to the VA and other healthcare facilities, but this means
level.
more.
I mean, from like an emotional level, rewarding. It just feels good being a good person and doing that deed. Yeah.
Yeah, you go into this project and you think, hey, I'm going to do something and share information and inform people about this, but it changes your life as well, right? You have these experiences, and it's added significantly. I can take beautiful images of landscapes and waterfalls and sailing races, but nothing means more in my work than to keep the memory of these individuals alive, and their families knows, hey, we care. They sometimes, I think, to answer your original question, is like sometimes I think there's a feeling that the world has moved beyond their family's loss. And in many respects,
Right.
it has. Yet we live in a country of what, 340, 350 million people. There are millions of us that really do still care and don't want them to be lost to history.
I love that. I love that. Is there any all great information? Is there any thought? Is there going to be a part two? Like because we've gone into other wars. Have you thought? Has that been a venture that you maybe I could or no? This is my one thing. I'm going to leave it at that. And just focus on my photography. Has that ever crossed your mind?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. No. Right. Well, the book just came out in April, so I've got
Yep.
books to. It's not that I'm trying to sell, but there's, I have to sell
Right.
them.
Yeah,
It's going to
you
eight.
have
You also put a lot of work into it,
Yeah.
and that should not go unnoticed.
yeah.
And,
At the end of
and,
the day, this book isn't sponsored by UNICEF. You have to
right.
make it
Right.
cost
It
money.
took your own money to do that.
Yeah.
It took time away from your family, time, just everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't know that I'll break even on the book at any date, but that wasn't the purpose of the book, right? We printed it in the United States, right? This is a U.S. book. We printed it in the United States. It costs more to print it in the United States, but that was part of the whole. Like, it would be insane to print it in China. It would be absurd to do that, right? So we printed it
Yeah.
in the United States, and we kept the price. And this is one of the things we went back and forth with in the preparations. I insisted that this be kept below $30 because it has to be accessible. It's not the capstone, hey, this is Richard Sherman's best photographs over 30 years of photography. It's about the individuals that getting these stories out. So we kept the price just below $30 so that it could be enjoyed by as many people as possible. And that was really important, right? So the incentives are in line is like, the more people know about the story, the better it is. And so we're looking at this as a chance to share it with a lot of folks, and hopefully people are interested in picking up the book. There are I should say there are 3 chapters to the book, and it follows the emotional journey or the journey you take to go into Normandy or any of these cemeteries, right? So generally, when you go in, you feel pretty. There's not an exact word for it, but you feel positive. You feel honor, respect, these positives, and you go in and the ABMC has these places immaculate, right? There's not anything, no trash on the ground. They wash the headstones, they keep them in perfect working order. Everything works, and it's just a beautiful final resting place, and rightly so for the individual. So the images are generally pretty or positive, right? There's beautiful light, there's ceremonies, there's dress uniforms, and there's flags and great sunshine. And then the second thing we do when we go into a cemetery after we get past that experience is we walk among the headstones. That's the title of chapter 2. And we go and reread headstones. We wonder and we start to think about what people were like and what their goals and aspirations were. And so that's where the 54 biographies come in. And as a side note, I would say the Somme, which I mentioned earlier, is the first place I went. One of the very first cemetery headstones that I came across was a guy named Clyde Sherman. I'm not related to Clyde Sherman. I don't know Clyde Sherman, but right, that was that connection. Like, hey, what was he like? What did he? Turned out he was a steamship worker in the Midwest. But anyway, I did research on him, including. But you start to wonder what their lives were like, what who were these people, right? And so that's chapter 2, the biographies, and then chapter 3, which is entitled Taps. The images become progressively darker because at a certain stage, if you go through Normandy, you've got to walk out of Normandy, and you walk after row after row after row of headstones, and there's a darkness. There's a reality starts to hit you, and so the images become progressively darker. More shadow, darker coloration. Fog, rain, fallen leaves, ice, and that's what it feels like to go to any of these cemeteries. You go in and you're so grateful, and it's like going. Maybe it's a bad analogy, but to a Hall of Fame. This is where you go to. You've heard about these people, and you want to pay your respects, and then you wonder what they were like, and then you walk out and you realize the magnitude, the toll, not just on the individuals, but especially as it relates, say, for the brothers and the Tester brothers, the toll that it takes on families to lose three sons in a war is a profound sacrifice for the family.
Yeah, the crazy thing is that's not a. It's hard. It's hard for like I don't know. For me, it's hard. You look at the GWAT, right? And like we've lost somewhere around 10,000 soldiers.
Yeah.
And it's we talk about it. And we're like, oh, it's terrible. It's this, that, the other. And it is. It's horrible. But then if you look back at like, I mean, even Vietnam, Korea, World War II, where they're like if we got like, well, Dave was a part, like he had his, the platoon had what, 6 casualties or 7 casualties in one day.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my god, that's a horrible mass cas. Like it's a,
Yeah.
but when you look back at like Vietnam and Korea and World War II, World War One, where they had like brigades of 1,000 or 1,500 people that are just, they're gone now. Like they don't exist.
Yeah.
They're, all of them are dead.
Yeah.
It's
We
They
should
it's
never
cease to
compare,
exist.
but the loss is horrible. But you're
right,
absolutely right,
but
dude.
yeah, the
The
immense
multitude,
amount
the
of,
mass
yeah,
amount, yes,
and
100%.
but that reverberates back home
Yeah.
as well, because for every one of those guys, like there's a family back home. If there's 200,000 families back home that just don't have, like, after D-Day and Normandy invasion, or
Yeah.
fighting on Iwo Jima in the Pacific Theater, the amount of letters and people, and the fact that all 10,000 of the people that were killed in GWOT are back in the States buried.
Yeah.
There are so many people that died during World War II and like Korea and Vietnam. Well, not so much Vietnam, but Korea and
Korea.
World War II and World War One, that we couldn't even bring them home.
Yeah.
They're there. Like they will never come home. They're
Yep.
always, that's their home now.
Yeah,
That's
and the Department of Defense, POWMIA agency is still trying to, from the Vietnam era and before, still identifying bodies. Right, they're on the walls of the missing, and in the overseas cemeteries, they have a little rosette that they put next to, in the walls of missing, once someone has been identified and recovered.
And you see
And
that on
so,
occasion when they bring bodies back, and this. Yeah.
the Vietnam Memorial has even got, it's got spaces intentionally left in it
Correct.
so that they can add names when they find them. Yeah.
well, I know we've given the Marine Corps a hard time and had a good laugh about it, but in Manila,
We always will.
say,
We always will.
Yeah.
in Manila, right, that's our largest by number interred. There's over twice as many individuals on the walls of the missing than there are actually interred. There's like 36, almost 37,000 individuals on the walls of the missing, because in the nature of the combat, ships go down, uh, Marines are killed on islands and eaten by sharks or chopped up by the Japanese. We've never recovered them. So it's a sad truth, is that there's over twice as many individuals on the walls of the missing in our only Pacific cemetery than there. Excuse me, Far East. We have the Punch Bowl
Right.
and stuff like that in Hawaii, but overseas. But yeah, it's over twice as many have never been recovered. They're on the walls of the missing.
Yeah. That's yeah.
And,
That's just,
and information flow, right?
And I guess that's the good thing about the book, because when you look at the numbers, they're so mind-boggling and huge that it's hard to
Conceptualize, yeah,
But
whatever.
it's hard to put name or faces with the numbers because there's just so many of them.
Yeah.
But every one of those numbers had a face and a name and a mom and a dad and a brother or sister or somebody that, that's insane.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's the numbers become so inaccessible. So there's just there's a crazy numbers that we just end up quoting statistics, and that's what this book tries to do. Is I have obviously a lot of warriors, bombardiers, infantrymen, artillerymen, but there's also chaplains and nurses and doctors, and some of these nurses were, I mean, there's a gal named Helen Fairchild. She died in World War One. She was in theater.
There's a documentary I think about her. Yeah, there's a documentary I think about her. It's on the History Channel, or But go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no. I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, and she died a year before American Expeditionary Force came, or 6 months before the American Expeditionary Force came in. So she was helping the British and the French troops, and at least one occasion, if not many, she gave her gas mask to one of the soldiers that she was helping, and she wrote about digging underneath the tents because they were being bombed at the same. This is World War One, right? And so they were ahead in theater in support of combat well before American Expeditionary Force arrived. And the scale of the Somme, which I mentioned, and Verdun. Verdun preceded Saddam. World War One. I'm going to talk British and French for a second, but in the Somme battle, the Verdun battle, which had preceded it, major offensive from the British. From the Germans. 200,000 Allied troops were casualties, and 200,000 from the German side as well. So that's the Verdun. And then it was followed up by the British in the same month, July. It just went 1916 was just a horrific year. It went from spring through July was Verdun. And then it continued on for a couple more months as the British then tried to do what the Germans tried and launch a major offensive. And they lost 400,000 troops in the offensive in the Somme, and that's before we got there. Of course, we got there in 1918 and recaptured that ground. Yeah. So you got in a small area just in the course of 6-8 months among the British and Allied troops 600,000 casualties.
Oh, yeah, that's insane. Like I said, though, those numbers they're so big. Like there aren't 600,000 people in 90% of American cities. You know what I mean? That's like a whole city.
Depends on where you're at.
Yeah. There are very few cities in the States that have the biggest, like Nashville doesn't have 600,000 people in it.
Really?
No, it doesn't. What? No, it doesn't.
That's beyond me. You'd have to talk to Maureen about that.
Don't worry, Chris is about to. Oh,
You just have to look it up. Chris, look that up.
New York does. Los Angeles does.
Yeah.
But other than your mega giant cities, most cities in the United States are a big city is 250,000 people. It's like
but just wiped out. And that's World War One before we got, aviation really effective and bombing and stuff like that, right? So, technology has had a huge role, right? And we have the luxury in our past wars, when there's been conscription, is we've had the safety of an island, safety of an ocean, and we have our own continent. But now with the reach of missiles and aviation, we're no longer protected solely by geography. And back in those days, right, you may lose a son or a daughter and not know for 4-6 months, like what happened. I've stopped getting letters. They don't. The Army or the Navy doesn't know what happened, right? That you may not know. All you know is you stopped getting letters 4 or 6 months ago, and then finally the telegram shows up, much to your horror. And Tester Brothers, the mother received 3 telegrams in 3 consecutive years. I mean, how do you go on from that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So where are the locations? Just the link? You said is it available in bookstores? Are you going towards that? Well, eventually maybe.
Yeah, we'll see, right? I'd love to be able to get enough, thank you for having me on board, enough, social media and references and book reviews that it'd be more seriously considered by the publishers. But right now we're selling it through Etsy. That's just the front end. I have a warehouse in the back end, and I also offer signed copies as well. I can write a personal note or whatever. So we use Etsy. It's neverhomeheroes.etsy.com is a website where you can buy it directly, or you can just go to neverhomeheroes.com and there's a link to buy the book there as well. And so, it has 225 plus photos. In chapter 2, we talked about the headstone. So those headstone photos are mine. But there's also pictures of every individual that I write about, right? That took a long time. We were talking about COVID. It helped to contact families or look through archives. I think the Patton images, for example, came from VMI. He went to VMI for just 1 year, but they have a significant archive of General Patton's images. But individual families also contributed to the book. So there are some 225 plus images in the book, 54 biographies, 3 chapters, and as I mentioned before we started, Vice Admiral Doug Crowder, the former head of the Navy 7th Fleet, 3-star admiral, right? 7th Fleet, for those who don't know, is Asian theater based out of Japan. He wrote the foreword and also shared his family's personal experience in loss in World War II, and then his experience visiting these cemeteries, as well as being a commander and the responsibility he had in his job as commanding, naval forces in the 7th Fleet.
Yeah. I looked at it earlier. I would get up and go buy the book, but I would have to leave. But yeah, I could pick it up right after we get done. And and I think for me, the reason I'm going to buy the book is not so much like I'm interested in looking at it, but I really just want to put it like so my kid can look at it and like because it's like it's the job of every generation to share those stories so that future generations don't have to, they don't have to have 600,000 people get killed
100%.
because they can't just figure it out. And when you think, if you think about those numbers, like that's that's that many potential doctors, lawyers, like inventors of like there's a very good or a very good chance that the person who would have cured cancer
Was part of that.
was is dead now because we can't figure it out. Like we can't just, you know what I mean?
Yeah, as infantrymen, one thing was pretty certain: if you're having chow next, or having rations in the morning, you're certain that you look around, not every those guys going to come back by the end of the day. That's just became a daily experience for them, and that's
And
the sad reality.
that's a tough mindset to have. I mean, we were all infantrymen. You know, Buddy went on, did special forces, did some really cool stuff. I had 2 combat tours, Nick as well. You know, we saw combat.
He's playing golf. Don't talk.
He's playing golf. We're not going to talk about
Nick
Nick.
anymore because he's playing golf.
And we lost people, but just that alone, knowing that that was just a statistical thing, like it's not almost, it was a guarantee. Like we're gonna go out and a lot of like we got the speeches before missions and stuff. Some of you men might not come back, but realistically, on our mission, most of the time we did come back.
Yeah,
it wasn't a statistical thing. Like so many died today. Like tomorrow, a couple of you are gonna die as well.
I don't know whether it's a gift or a curse to have
That's
as
significant.
little amount of people die that you can take every one of their losses personally and like
Yep.
feel their loss and all that,
Yep.
or have so many die that you're so cynical about.
Yeah,
you'd have to. The only way you could hope.
shoot.
Yeah, the only way you could cope with that is just be like, yeah, like we're not going to be friends, or you're going to die tomorrow.
It was shell shock back then. The PTSD was shell shock. Like that didn't even have a That's
Ambrose mentioned that's a lot in his work with Band of Brothers. It's like the guys who, when starting with Market Garden and afterwards the 150% casualty, the new guys coming in, they were isolated, right? Because no one wanted to get to know them because it was very doubtful that they were going to survive, right? So you didn't really want to put yourself out, and there is that kind of a you lose that human interaction, and
yeah,
the day really just
become a dick. Yeah, you just kind of become a jerk, but it's how you protect yourself from all of that. That's
I think it was John Keegan in his book on World War I. I think it was Keegan who said it's not surprising that people lost their minds and collapsed in combat. What's surprising is so many American troops continue to go forward. That's what the surprising thing. When you look around and you've got thousands of bodies next to you and you're still going forward, that's what's the exceptionalism. And I know in many parts of our society today, it's a full-time activity to beat up on our country. But I mean, the culture here, and guys like you, I was an intelligence officer. I was not an infantryman. Guys like you get up and you move forward, right? That's what makes this country great. That's what makes this country great. And
it's to be honest, I think that it's a lack of options, and that's the reason that you have to what are you going to do? Sit there and die, or go forward and die? And that's the only option. And I mean, maybe that's one of the lessons learned. It's like sometimes you have to get rid of your options so that you can only move forward. We got to burn the boats.
Yep.
We need to burn the boats.
But remember, you guys raise your hands, right? And at that time, some of those guys, right? They were gas station clerks. They were whatever they did. They were taught school or whatever, and they're being they don't have that mentality. Maybe they didn't come from a military family, or they didn't just have that that's in your heart, right? That like you got to do something, and yet they still went forward.
Yeah,
still went forward.
Yeah, that is very significant.
Yeah,
they're being told like you're doing this, like draft, like all this.
So my dad is Probably if you're watching, hey dad. But my dad is a product of he was in Vietnam during the draft, and he's got a really weird perspective. Well, not weird, but he has an insight to the draft that I think is pretty interesting. And his insight is that the draft was good because it ensured diversity of thought in the force because they like it wasn't because like the same group of people were volunteering. They just drafted like there was a lottery. If you got picked, and you went.
Yeah.
So there was somebody who had a background in farming. There was somebody who had a background in mechanics. There was somebody who was a school teacher. There was somebody who did this and did that, and they all had to come together to form a unit. But they had that ability, and that's why they attribute like a lot of success is attributed to U.S. forces anyways because there were so many different people that were just like, well, why are we doing it this? Let's just go do this.
Yeah.
Why? Like, grab a welder and we'll weld something in the front of these Sherman tanks and we'll go through the hedgerows instead of driving around them. You know what I mean? Because what are they gonna do? We're draftees. Will they kick us out? Doesn't matter. Like we'll do our thing. You know. So
Yeah, there's a wonderful book, being a Navy guy, called Midway, and it was written in 1954, 56, and it's published by the Naval Institute Press, our publication arm for the Navy, right? And it was written by two Japanese officers, and they revealed what it is that was their failure, starting with Pearl Harbor and going through Midway and why they lost and what was going on behind the curtain that we never got to see. And, there's a lot of really interesting lessons about that. But one of the lessons that I took out of it was, hierarchical commands are great, but when there's poor communication or there's problems in getting direction from the top, the foot soldier is destroyed, and our ability to train leaders starting out very early in their career, there's always a leader. There's a sergeant that's now the captain. All of a sudden, 90 days later, everybody else is gone. He's now the captain, right? And there's a lance corporal that's now the staff sergeant, right? There's that structure that we have. Like we don't have a single point of failure. We don't have a single point of failure, and that's what makes us very, very effective. Whereas certain societies, such as the Japanese in World War II, struggled because they had to wait to get orders from the mainland. And part of the story, quick spoiler alert, one of the great failures was that it was the Army, the general, that was superior to the Navy. And so they wanted to have the battleships. And while the Navy wanted to go after the carriers out of Pearl Harbor, they waited for orders from the top, which didn't come. And they were more concerned about the battleships. But if they had gone after our carriers, which were out of port, the war certainly would have gone on for quite a bit longer in Asia in World War II.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
What's the chat saying? Oh, my mom says, look forward to reading your book. Thanks, Mom. So she's a
Thanks, Mom.
supporter. She's playing. Charlie says, buddy's dad. Okay. And then Sean, I needed this today. I've been in a bad funk. Hey, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
We all go through those times, brother.
Anyway, I don't know. I'm still kind of lost in thought.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing the book too.
Yeah, I also I think it'd be it's so did you design it to be like a coffee table book and a conversation piece? Is that what
it's exactly right. That's exactly right. It's like, hey, there's a guy who sent me a wonderful text. He goes through he turns one page a day. So he's pretty much close to done now. So he just reads one, and he just wants to leave it on the table. So he walks by the coffee, his countertop in the morning, reads a page, or just maybe there's just images on the page, and he just wants to take it in. So yeah, it's designed to be a humanist, right? There's great writers, Ambrose we talked about, Atkinson's Pulitzer Prize winning trilogy on World War II. There's Keegan's great books. They're great books about the wars from the historian perspective. This is a humanist story. Is remembering he had a dog. He was getting married. She had a mother that she was Wilma Vincent. Let me tell you this quick story. Wilma Vincent was a flight nurse, so she was bringing casualties back, and they had to complete, I think it was 35 combat missions in order to be sent home. So it took her a couple of years to complete her combat missions, and she was done. She's going home. So Wilma Vincent was a flight nurse. Only thing is her girlfriend was dating an officer and wanted to go to the party, and her girlfriend said, "Will you take this flight for me?" So she went to the officer in charge, said, "Let me take this flight." He said, "No." He's like, "No, come on." She wants. Of course, Wilma Vincent is in Netherlands, American Cemetery. That flight crashed or was shot down. I'm not exactly certain. I don't know if we know exactly what happened, but the entire crew was lost aboard. There's these little vignettes of people caring about each other, whether it's a Ukrainian guy getting chocolate bars from the Americans, or Wilma Vincent, trying to. She's done all her combat missions. She's got her ticket home, and here she is. She takes one last flight to evacuate some injured troops, and the entire crew is lost.
Yeah. You would wish humanity as a whole could just aspire to be that way. All the problems would be fixed, man.
Yeah, true. Anywho,
yeah, phenomenal.
You're the
Rich.
person.
Love it. Yeah. I mean, hopefully the viewers that are watching now and they're going to watch later or listen to us later support your book. I can't wait to get my hands on it. I know you sent us the link and stuff, but I want to get an actual copy and then go from there. Do you have any last final words for everybody that's watching, everybody that's going to tune in later or whatever? And then
I guess the last word is, we're fortunate to still be here. We have those who went before to thank us. We have you guys to thank for it. And there's this people say that the freedom is never free, but also the book tells you that freedom has had a great toll and continues to have a great toll on families and individuals. And it's great that we live, I think, on the backs of the Vietnam veterans who came back with such a terrible experience, and now so many people maybe becomes reflexive, but there's more PTSD support, there's more crisis intervention, there's more thank yous and stuff like that. But I think if we say, never forget, but if we don't teach, Buddy was talking about that earlier, if we don't teach them in the first place, the next generation in the first place, how can they never forget something that we never taught them?
They never knew. Yeah, exactly. You're not wrong, and that is like it, and that goes for. But I mean, your book deals with World War I, World War II, but like like there are people that are alive right now that weren't even alive during like September 11th, and it's hard to get them to remember that, let alone something that happened 100 years ago.
AAR.
Let's see, the AAR, super easy. At a certain age, you start taking weird selfies, and stupid people make you mad.
And Death Star coming towards Earth.
I'm currently at that was
you got one
or the other. Oh, my bad. Anyway, there's also a self-correcting Death Star that looks like a GMC Power Wagon with a dad alien smacking the shit out of his kids in the back seat because they keep asking him how many more light years we have until we get to Earth and the Anunnaki are on the plane.
Ooh, I like that.
And I called it a plane also. Don't know how that happened. Anyway, and then the guest today, Richard Sherman, who is a photographer that and a published author who wrote a book called Never Home, remembering the was it. So I don't want to say
military heroes,
remembering the military remembering the fallen who never made it home. Yeah. But you can get it on SD. I have it pulled up right now, and gonna buy it as soon as we get I get over to my credit card because that's how I roll.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about the book is a conversation starter about remembering people that I mean, it's our job to remember them so that we don't continue to make the same mistakes over and over and over again. And then that's it.
Great. Again, Richard, thank you so much for coming on. Great conversation. A lot of fun. Obviously, if you ever want to come back on, you just got to hit us up. For everybody that tuned in late, go to VeteranTrashTalk.com. That has the links to everywhere that we stream, all of our platforms. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Go to YouTube, give us a subscribe and a like because we are shadow banned on there. It would be nice to push us a little bit more through the algorithm, not because we're trying to get paid, but because we want to promote veteran-owned businesses, veteran authors. We got to take care of ourselves. Go to shop.veterantrashtalk.com. We got the QR code in the bottom. That's Buddy's wearing one of those shirts. Yeah, the little, front towards the enemy, but this one, especially today, I think it was very fitting for the show. Remember the fallen. You can get that at shop.veterantrashtalk.com. Thanks, everybody, and we'll catch you guys next Saturday. Boom.
Thanks, guys.
What's up, Trash Talkers? What's up, Gruntworks Nation? How do you hire the right financial advisor? In this video, that's going to be somewhere up here when they put the QR code up there. Just scan it or go to our YouTube channel, all right, and you'll be able to download it. In that video, questions are asked and answered about finding the right financial advisor for you and your loved ones. What license do they hold? The crucial factor can provide you with a sense of security and confidence in your financial advisor. What is their experience? See if they have any written complaints in the disclosures. Why is it in your best interest to work with a fiduciary? This role is crucial as it ensures that your advisor working in your best interest, fostering trust and transparency in the advisor-client relationship. Understanding the advisor's process for developing your financial plan is also important. Do they conduct a thorough financial assessment, discuss your goals, and then create a personalized plan? This insight can give you a clear picture of their approach and thoroughness. Find out how to do your own research and security representatives, illustrating their complaint record, licenses held, time in profession, and more. If you haven't been watching, we have done 2 of a 3-part series with Army veteran Ken. All right, again, go to that QR code right there. If it's not there, it was there earlier, or go to our YouTube channel, and we will give you all the financial advice that you need, also help you find the right financial advisor. Stay tuned. Check out for the events for our 3rd of the 3-part series coming up.